All right, today, Peter and the Starcatchers, we have caught up to where I was reading to grade 4, 5 in Zara's class. Monsieur Vardy's class, chapter 9, The Rescue, the first words that you haven't already heard at school. Peter leaned over the port rail to watch as the two fat, wet men clinging to knotted ropes were hauled slowly aboard the Neverland. The seas swelled and shifted, the fat men crying out as they swung like pendulums. Peter had seen the drowning men first. He'd pointed them out to a sailor who'd run to tell Slank. Peter had kept waving as the Neverland drew closer to let the men know they'd be rescued. And now, as they were hauled aboard, Peter was as curious as everyone else to learn who they were and how they got into their predicament. He joined the crowd, forming a circle around the men as they sat on the deck, dripping, panting, looking apprehensively up at their rescuers. Peter noticed Molly on the other side of the circle. Their eyes met for a moment. Then Peter looked away. Why do I always look away? Move aside, said Slank, shoving his way through the crowd. He stood over the two men and said, Do you speak English? The fatter of the two, though not by much, added, coughing, and said, Yes, sir. What's your names? Asked Slank. What ship were you from, and how did you end up in the sea? My name is Harbuckle, sir, said the fatter one. This here is Preston. We thank you, sir, for saving our lives. We was surely... Slank interrupted. I asked you what ship you're from, he said, and how you wound up in the sea. We're from the Marcel, said Harbuckle. The slightly slimmer, fat man, Preston, looked at his mate, puzzled. No, we're not, he said. We're from the... His sentence was cut short by a sharp blow to the side of his head from Harbuckle. Hey, said Preston, rubbing his head. Don't pay him no mind, said Harbuckle to Slank. He's confused from swallowing seawater. He knows good and well we're from the Marcel. Harbuckle was glaring at Preston now. Got that, mate? The Marcel? Is that so? Said Slank quietly. Yes, sir, said Harbuckle. It surely is. She went down in a storm, a bad one. We was lucky to get onto the dory. We were lucky to get the dory launched, sir. And if you hadn't come along, I know the Marcel, interrupted Slank. You do? Said Harbuckle, looking surprised. I do, said Slank. Tell me, did Captain Ferguson go down with the ship? Harbuckle hesitated, then said, Aye, sir, that he did. He was a courageous man, Captain Ferguson. Yes, said Slank, he was. Now, there's one more thing I need you to tell me. What's that, sir? Said Harbuckle. Slank drew his knife, the blade's honed edge glinting. What part of you do I feed to the sharks first? The crowd gasped, some drawing back, some moving in for a better view. No, said Harbuckle, his fear-widened eyes riveted on the knife. Please, sir, why? Because you're a lying piece of kelp, said Slank. The Marcel is commanded by Captain Page. Captain Ferguson died 20 years ago. Slank took a step toward Harbuckle, who scrambled backward. Please, sir, he screamed. No, I'll tell you the truth. And what would that be? Snarled Slank. We was thrown off the Sea Devil, said Harbuckle. Another gasp from the crowd. Slank barked out a laugh. Did you expect me to believe that Black Stash would sail with a pair of fat slugs like you? It's true, sir, said Harbuckle. I swear it. He turned to Preston. Tell him, Preston. Tell him what ship we're from. Preston frowned. The Marcel, he said. No, shouted Harbuckle. But you said, tell him the truth before he kills us, you idiot, screamed Harbuckle. Well, make up your mind, said Preston. To Slank, he said, I tried to tell you. We're from the Sea Devil. Slank studied the two men. All right, then, he said. If you're from the Sea Devil, what were you doing in the sea? And before you answer, know this. If I think you're lying, you'll go right back into the sea. He flashed the blade. In pieces. Harbuckle gulped. Sir, he said, Black Stash put us adrift in a dory. And why would he do that? Said Slank. To lighten the sea devil, said Harbuckle, to give her speed. He even threw most of the water barrels overboard. Another crowd gasped. You're lying, said Slank, stepping forward again. No captain throws water overboard. It's true, said Harbuckle. Black Stash is mad. He says now the crew will have to catch the Wasp to get the water. The Wasp, said Slank. Black Stash is after the Wasp? Peter noticed that across the circle, Molly had moved forward a step. Her father was aboard the Wasp. Yes, said Harbuckle. He says there's a treasure on the Wasp. And what would that be? Asked Slank. He didn't specify, said Harbuckle. He just said it was a great treasure, the greatest treasure ever taken to sea, he says. Peter saw Molly frown. The greatest treasure ever taken to sea, repeated Slank softly. That's what he says, said Harbuckle. Any clue as to the nature of this treasure? Slank asked. A trunk, Harbuckle said. It's in a trunk. Blackstash has a prisoner, an officer of the Royal Guard. He's the one told Blackstash about the trunk. Says a fine trunk was brought aboard just before the Wasp set sail, escorted by 12 armed men. What's in this trunk? Asked Slank. Molly was staring hard at the pirate now. I don't know, said Harbuckle. The guardsman prisoner don't know neither. Just that it's to go from the Queen of England to the King of Randoon by the fastest ship afloat, under the heaviest guard. Whatever it is in there, it's important enough to have 2 royals concerned about it. Slank stared out to sea for a long moment, then looked back down at Preston and Harbuckle, who watched him fearfully, awaiting their fate. Another long moment passed. Finally, Slank spoke. You're pirate scum, he said. Yes, sir, said Harbuckle. But we... Shut up, said Slank. You're pirate scum, and what I should do is throw you both over the side right now. Harbuckle whimpered. Preston wet his pants, but nobody could tell as his clothes were already soaked. But I'm going to let you live, said Slank. Thank you, sir, said Harbuckle. 1,000... Shut up, said Slank. I'm going to let you live for now, because you might be useful. For now. Little Richard, the giant loomed behind Slank, his whip coiled on his fat leather belt. Take this pirate scum below. The rest of you men, get back to work. The crowd dispersed, the sailors murmuring about the drama they'd just watched. Peter edged his way toward Molly, who was still staring at the spot where Harbuckle had lain. Molly, he said. She looked up at him, her face blank, her green eyes devoid of their usual sparkle. What? She said. I know your father is on the Wasp, he said. Yes. Well, I hope he'll be all right. Thank you. Molly turned to go. Peter could see she didn't want to talk, but he burned with curiosity. Molly, he said. She turned back. I wanted to thank you for last night, Peter said, for helping me. You're welcome. She started to turn again, but Peter put his hand on her arm. Wait, he said. What were you doing in that room? What are they keeping in there? And did you see the rat? In the air. Did you see it? Molly was staring at him now. Peter, she said, listen to me. This is very important. You mustn't... Molly! The 2 youngsters were suddenly separated by the massive form of Mrs. Bumbrake, her front side toward Molly, leaving Peter face to face with her formidable backside. I've told you 1,000 times you are not to be on this deck without me, and you are to stay away from the riffraff. But no back talk, young lady. You come with me. With Molly in tow, Mrs. Bumbrake barged away, leaving behind a cloud of lavender. Peter watched them go. I mustn't... What? He drifted forward toward a knot of sailors who were pretending to work while they gossiped. There was much to gossip about. There were the 2 rescued pirates, of course, but also something else, something that had happened last night, news of which was circulating around the ship. Guarding the door, one of the sailors was saying, he says 1 minute he was wide awake, next minute he wakes up on the floor like there was a spell cast on him, he says. Peter moved closer. Magic spell? scoffed another sailor. Not hardly. Too much rum. That's your magic spell. No, said the storyteller, not John. He don't drink, not a drop. That's why Slank gave him the guard duty. No, he says something put him out, and when he woke up, there was people in the room. Voices. So John goes running in there, and somebody runs right into him. Who? He didn't see. It happened so sudden, he said, but whoever it was, he trips John, and down John goes headfirst into that trunk. What's in that trunk, anyway? Dunno, said the storyteller, but whatever it is, Slank guards it like gold. So anyway, John's trying to get up, and his head feels bust open, and he looks up, and then he sees it. The storyteller paused dramatically. What? Asked one of the listeners. He sees what? A rat, said the storyteller. A flying rat. You mean it was jumping? Because I've seen him jump as far as... No, said the storyteller. John says it was flying. That's the bump on his head talking, said one. I don't know, it ain't like John to imagine things. Well, I don't believe it. I've sailed with rats for 30 years, and they don't fly. I think it's true, said a new voice from a big man with a big wart on his nose, the sailor Peter had seen acting strange around the mysterious cargo on the first day. He looked around at the group. I believe John, he said. Why's that, Alf? Because the rat was in the room with that trunk. I touched that trunk the day we set sail. There's something strange about it. Strange is one thing, Alf. Flying rats is another. But I'm telling you, I felt it, said Alf. I felt something. I don't know. Magic. I felt like... Alf looked around, hesitant. Like what, Alf? Like I could fly, said Alf. There was a pause. And then the crowd erupted in laughter. Sure, Alf, you could fly. You're a regular bluebird, Alf. Look out, said somebody. Slank's coming. The sailors, still chuckling, quickly dispersed, leaving Alf red-faced, staring at his feet. Peter hesitated, then approached the big man and tugged at his sleeve. Alf looked down at him. What is it, boy? He said. I believe it too, said Peter. About the rat. Alf frowned. Why? Peter hesitated, then said, because I saw it. Alf bent over, his face now close to Peter's. You saw it, boy? Was you down there? Peter nodded. Did you see anything else? Said Alf. Did you happen to see what's in the trunk? No, sir, said Peter. Alf steadied him, then spoke softly. But you want to, he said. You want to know what's in there. Peter nodded again. Me too, boy, said Alf. Me too.